I am a black woman. And if you don't see my blackness, then you don't see me. Guys, and welcome back to my channel. So you guys see the title of this video, so you know this video is not going to be my usual family vlog or DIY video or backyard renovations video. This video I'm gonna talk really about the things that I have encountered because I'm a black woman in America. When I think about racism, there are so many situations, guys, that I can discuss with you guys. But I think that I'm going to start this video off by discussing my very first memory of racism as a child. If you follow me on this channel, you know that I grew up in a small town in South Carolina called Clio, South Carolina. I think that I was around 9, no more than 10 years old when this situation occurred. It was the winter time because I had on one of my big blue bubble coats. I know we all remember those coats. When I was a child, I used to love my big old blue bubble coat that I used to wear. I used to wear that coat all the time. But I remember my mother sending me to the store for her. Now, in our town, those people who are from Clio or who still live in Clio, everyone knows Jerry Nolan. Everyone knows Bill Dennis' store. Back when I grew up, those stores, my mother had credit accounts at both stores, and she would often call the stores and tell them that either me or one of my siblings were going to come to the store to pick up items for her. So on this particular day, I remember walking from our home, and I walked to Jerry Nolan's store first because it was closer to our home. And when I went in the store, he said, "Hey, you're Seal's daughter. Here's what your mom wanted you to come get." So he gave me her items. They were in a small brown bag. The brown was small. The bag was actually small enough for me to put it down in my coat pocket. So I put it in my coat pocket, and then I walked down to Bill Dennis. Bill Dennis' store was maybe 5-6 minutes walk from Jerry Nolan's. So when I got into Bill Dennis' store, before I went to the register to get the items that my mom had called him and told him that I was going to come get, I went to the candy aisle because I had money. I went to the candy aisle and I picked up some candy that I wanted. So I took it back up to the register. I told him, Mr. Bill Dennis, that I was in the store to get the items that my mother had sent me to the store to get. I put my candy on the counter, as I said, and then I reached down into my pockets, my coat pockets, to get my money. And when I was reaching in my coat pockets, I was young. Like I said, I was maybe 9 or 10 years old. I was reaching into my coat pockets. I was reaching around the bag that I got out of, from Jerry Nolan's store. And while I was reaching down, getting the money out of my pocket, he came around the register and he reached his hands in my pockets and took everything out of my pockets. And then he pulled the stuff out of the bag that I got from Jerry Nolan's store, and he said, "You must have stolen this out of my store." And I told him, I said, "I didn't steal anything. I got this from Jerry Nolan's store." So he went around and he called down to Jerry Nolan's store, and Jerry Nolan told him, yes, she purchased those things out of my store where on credit, her mom sent her there. So she didn't take anything out of your store. He didn't apologize. he just gave the things back to me. He said, because I know you people love to steal. So I have to check because you people always come in my store and steal my stuff. And then his son said, yeah, you know how those little black kids do. They don't never have money. I'm surprised she has money. So I got my mom's items and I walked back by Jerry Nolan's store. And when I was walking by his store, he came out and he said to me, I apologize that, you know, you had to go through that. Maybe you shouldn't go in his store anymore. So, see you later. So, lock the door behind you. So, when I went home, I gave my mom her things. I didn't tell my mom what happened. At this point, my parents were already separated, so I spent the weekends with my father. So when my father came to pick me up later that day, as soon as I got in his vehicle, lock the door behind you, son. As soon as I got in his vehicle, I told him what happened. And before we left Clio to go to his house, my father lived in Dillon. He drove up to Bill Dennis's store. And I'm not sure what my father said when he went into that store. I just know that he told me to wait in the car, and he parked in front of the store. And I didn't hear a lot of loud talking or any of that. I just know that when my father came out the store, Bill Dennis was with him, and he came to the car and he apologized to me. So, and I didn't say anything to him. I just looked at him. And when my father got back in the car and when we drove off, I looked at my dad and I said, Daddy, you know what? I hate white people. I just hate white people. And I can only remember 2 times in my entire life that my father has ever spanked me. That was one of them. The other time was during my birthday party, but we're going to talk about that. But that was one of them. And then afterwards, he sat me down and he talked to me and he said, you can't look at the actions of one person in one race and just use that and put everybody in that race in a category. You can't do that. Some people are just wrong. They were born wrong. They were raised to be wrong. And that's just who and what they are. He said, I went in that store and I had a conversation with him. And after that conversation, he came out and apologized to you. My father said, now, do I think his apology was sincere? No, I do not. But he wasn't dealing with a little black girl. He was dealing with a black man that stands above him. So he probably, more than likely, was intimidated. But he said, you can't allow the actions of one person to cause you to feel a certain way about an entire race. And I understood that. You know, I understood that. And he told me, he said, I never want to hear you say that you hate anyone, because that's not the type of person I'm going to raise you to be. You can hate their actions and the things that they say and do, but you're not going to hate anyone. You have to love everybody. Now, you choose whether or not you like them, but you're going to have love in your heart for everybody. So that you hate white people, that's not okay. That's not going to stand with me. It took me getting a little older to really understand what my father meant by that, because at that point in my life, I was so young, and I just know that I had been treated poorly by a white man, and that was the first time that I had been made feel that way, and it really upset me. And me being that young, I really didn't know how I was supposed to deal with it. But my father really, explained that to me. I remember my father telling me this, and like I said, it took me a while to understand it. But I'm glad that now I'm at a point where I do understand it. Me and my father was having a conversation one day. And one thing about my father, if you knew him, You knew that he was no nonsense. He did not really joke around a lot when we had conversations. He told me the truth. He told me how it was every time. He didn't baby me a lot. He really didn't. Now, did he give me everything that I need plus I wanted plus more? Absolutely. But he definitely did not baby me. So when we had conversations, he told me the for real, for real. So we were talking one day, and this wasn't long before he passed away. This was maybe 6-7 months before he passed away. But we were talking one day, and he told me, he said, you know, you were born already with 3 strikes on your back. He said that first strike is because you're female. That second strike is because you were black. That third strike is because you were born in America. He said, so you are going to always have to work harder to prove yourself. Now, is it right? No. Is it fair? No. But you're always going to have to do that. And my father didn't lie, guys. He didn't. I found myself, you know, working for certain agencies, getting passed up for promotions that I would have white coworkers apply for, and I would have more experience than them. I would have more education than them. My personality would be better than theirs. My ability to relate to and to get along with the populations we serve will be better than theirs. And so would black coworkers of mine. But because of who we were passed up for positions. I've worked for agencies where there will be no people of color in any leadership roles. There would be diverse teams full of white men. How diverse is that? The only diverse thing within will be their hair color. And that would do something to me, because I will look and say, this agency, you know, we're supposed to be a diverse agency. We work with diverse populations, but not one position, not one management position is held by a person of color. Not one person on a diversity team is a person of color, or a woman for that matter. So when situations would occur with certain populations, they just wouldn't get it. And if you've never lived through a situation and you don't know anyone who's connected to you personally who lived through it, you won't understand it. You won't understand how, when someone says to a black person, all lives matter, you won't understand how offensive that is. You don't get that. I can tell you guys, going back to my childhood, one of my first memories of racism that I saw on the news was the situation with Rodney King. I think I was 12 years old, and I can remember my grandmothers, my aunt, my father, his friends. I can remember all of them saying, you know, he black. They're not going to do anything about that. I've heard during that time, I've heard teachers that taught in the public schools that I was in Clio, Marlboro County school system, and Dillon County school system. In both school systems, I heard both of those teachers refer to, I've heard teachers in both of those school districts refer to him as nigger and saying that he got what he deserved. One of the teachers, God, I wish I could remember his name, but I know he was a shop teacher in Dillon County school system. He lived in Clio. He lived in a big yellow house with a lot of windows. I used to call his house the glass house. I used to love driving by his house. And I remember I was walking, and where his house is, there is no sidewalk. But I was walking like towards his house because me and my cousins, we used to walk that way all the time to go down to our school playground. So I was walking, and I was going by his house, and I remember him, and when I spoke to him, I remember him saying, and I'm assuming it's his wife, it was a woman out there, because she was like, oh, those kids are speaking to you. And I remember him saying, I deal with niggas enough in school. I'm not going to deal with them while I'm at home. I remember that. And, that shocked me. And this was during, that Rodney King time. This was pretty much in the same month that happened. That's why I remember that. So it was a lot. Me being an adult, and when I came to Livingstone College for my undergraduate degree, I never experienced anything while I was on Livingstone campus. Livingstone was my safe ground. I loved being on that campus. Many of the professors there, black, white, and Asian, would always tell students, when you leave off this campus, you be careful. Be careful when you leave off of this campus. Be careful how you conduct yourselves, and be careful when you're dealing with law enforcement, because they don't have a negative light, and they don't shine a negative they don't have a positive light, and they don't shine a positive light on Livingstone students. And they were true. My first encounter with a police officer when I was at Livingstone here in Salisbury, it was Officer Carricker. I'm not sure if he still works with the Salisbury Police Department, but he was a real tall, big white guy. When I see him, I know him. And I'll never forget it. He pulled me over. And when he pulled me over, he didn't tell me why he was pulling me over. He didn't even ask me, for my license or anything up front. When he pulled me over, because I was leaving out of Livingstone campus, and I maybe drove. I didn't turn left or right. I kept straight out of off the campus. And when I drove off the campus, I drove, I think, 2-3 blocks down. But he was driving, really close to the campus when I was leaving, because when I pulled off the campus, he got behind me. And he pulled me over. Like I said, I drove maybe 2-3 blocks down, and he pulled me over. And when he came up to my car, he didn't come to my window and say, I pulled you over because of blah, 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 blah. Or you have a light out in the back, or can I see your license registration? He immediately opened my car door and told me to get out my car. So, of course, I said, well, I need to put my car in park. I didn't have my car in park. So while I'm putting my car in park, he pulled me out of my vehicle. And I'm looking, and I'm like, what is wrong with this guy? And my friend, who was my roommate at the time, she was in the car with me. And she got out, and we're looking like, what's going on? So he's like, well, I see you coming from Livingstone campus, and I see your tag on your car from South Carolina. You kids coming from South Carolina who go to Livingstone, y'all never have insurance on your car, so I'm sure you don't have insurance on your car. That was his excuse for pulling me out of the car. And then officer, and this was where I met Officer Hunter. He was a tall black officer. He had a really bad reputation with people in Salisbury. Officer Hunter did. But he was always nice to me. This is the first day I met him. He stopped as well, and he said to him, why are you harassing those college students? Leave those girls alone. So when he said that, he let us go. We got back in our car. He told me, Officer Hunter introduced himself to me and my friend. He said, if y'all have any issues with anything, give me a call. He gave us his phone number. That was the first time I met him. Even though I've seen him in some situations, in some real sticky situations here, and how he dealt with people before he passed. And I've seen Officer Carricker several times after that. We even had a confrontation, me and him, physical, for when he pulled me over again and pulled me out of my car. And that day when he pulled me out of my car, I wasn't there for it. And I just thank the Lord that I didn't get shot that day. Because if it wasn't for 2 black officers who was there, he probably would have shot me and got away with it, because he was pulling me out of my car, and really through my car window. I had to open the door to get out my car, and when I opened the door, so he couldn't pull me through my car window, I opened the door swinging at him. And like I said, if it wasn't for those 2 black officers who also stopped, he probably would have shot me. Although when he came up to my car, he was pulling me out of my car instead of asking me to step out. And I wonder how many other people that he's done that to here in Salisbury. I've had situations here in Salisbury where I lived in neighborhoods, and I've had officers pull me over and ask me why I was in that neighborhood. I lived in a 2-story home in a golf course close to the hospital in Salisbury. I was getting off work late one evening, and I was going home. You know, if you're a social worker, you work in children's services, your hours aren't 9 to 5. Sometimes you may get off 11, 12 o'clock at night, depending on what's going on with your kids, on your caseload. So I remember getting off work on more than one occasion, and I'm pulling in my neighborhood and being pulled over by law enforcement, and them asking me, where am I going? Why am I in that neighborhood? Like I'm not supposed to be there, here in Rowan County, in Salisbury. I remember more than one occasion, and I would show them, well, here's my ID. My ID has my home address on it, which is in this neighborhood, which is where I'm going. I've dealt with that more than once. I've even had one of the officers, after he pulled me over and gave my ID back to me, when I'm going home, he followed me down to my house, and when I put my key in to open the door, that's when he drove off. And not even talking about the fact that when I drove up to my house, my garage door opener was in my car, and I opened the garage from my car. Not even talking about that, but he had to see me physically walk in the house before he drove off, because I didn't belong in that neighborhood. I've dealt with that here, you know, with recently, with everything that's going on with the George Floyd situation, and how he was murdered by those officers who didn't care anything about his life, and what that situation has caused right now in America. And you know, and when I think about that situation has really given me the opportunity to see a lot of people for who they really are. Although we've had many situations occur, so many situations occur with African Americans and police officers, but this situation really caused me to see so many people for who and what they are. It was a situation with a student that goes to my son's school, but went to school with him, you know, played on the football team with him. And every time I think about how many times this child has been on that football field with my son, in the locker room with my son, on the bus going on, you know, different games and trips with my son, it sickens me to my stomach, because this child hates black people. One of the peaceful protests that happened here in Salisbury a few days ago, the message that he sent to a black student, a black female student, because she was there. Um, you know, it sickened me to my stomach, because I'm looking at, this child has been around my son for 4 years, and he hates people who looks like him. You know, and then I start really being told all the things that this child did at school. And then I look at who this child's family is, and, you know, who most of their family business money comes from. People who look like me. Because let me tell you something, guys. When you have a child that's 18 years old who has that much hatred in their heart for a race, that's not something that that child did alone. That child has a hatred in his heart the way he does for black people because his family has a hatred in their heart for him. He is a reflection of them. He has an issue with us. He, you know, because his family does. We are niggers to him because we are niggers to his family. You know, we are species to him because we are species to his family. And we are breeded to him because we are breeded to his family. Those are the things that he's heard his family say. Because when you raise your child in a house full of hatred for a certain person or a certain group of people, it's going to show when they go out. It is definitely going to show when they go out. And, you know, and I tell people, I had to call it out on my personal Facebook page because it did something to me. Because this young lady, smart young lady, I mean, she really, really good grades. She's a cheerleader. She's in many activities at the school. I mean, good kid. Never in any situations. But because she was at a protest being peaceful, he wanted to be confrontational with her. And I thought that one person with him was arrested, but it ended up being two people who was with him that night was arrested because they were shooting firearms in the air to prevent protesters from doing anything to the Confederate statue that sits downtown Salisbury for everyone to see. Although not one of the protesters had anything other than signs and their cell phones. So they didn't have anything to do anything to that statue. And they weren't trying to do anything to deface that statue or anything like that. But that was just his excuse to send hateful and racist messages to her. And it's a lot. This town is full of that. Me having a business in Salisbury, I've dealt with a lot of racism, you know, in Salisbury, being a business owner here, where I would deal with situations that I would talk to some of my white friends who weren't dealing with. And I know that it was, you know, that I was dealing with it because I was a black female business owner in Salisbury. That I don't have to worry about, well, that I haven't worried about in other places that I do business with, you know, in North Carolina. I can tell you, I was leaving my office one night. It was maybe 1 o'clock. I had to go there and get something. So I had on, you know, just a regular t-shirt, some ripped jeans, some sneakers. When I was coming out, police officers were sitting there. I don't know if they saw my vehicle. I don't know. I don't want to assume. But I know when I was coming out, you know, even though they saw me lock the door, they saw me come out the building, they saw me lock the door, they were like, what are you doing in this building? You know, this is a nice building. This is a nice area. What are you doing here? I'm here because I'm supposed to be here. This is my office. I could be here anytime, day or night. I pay to be at this building. well, what is your name? Blah, 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 blah. Just a lot of foolishness. And then when they figured out who I was, do you think they even apologized? Absolutely not. When you see all this stuff that's going on TV, prime example, I was looking at Facebook and I saw how an African American FBI agent was racially profiled by 2 white police officers. I can't say that I saw them apologize afterwards because I don't remember if I did or didn't. But I know in that video, I saw how they pretty much told him that he was the criminal that they were looking for. And it could have gotten really, really ugly. So when they pulled out his ID and saw who he was and saw that he was actually not who they were looking for and saw that he was not a criminal and that he was actually an FBI agent, I don't even think I saw them apologize to him. They took the handcuffs off and he got their, information, which they really didn't want to give to him. But in situations like that, I don't understand why when police officers interact with black people, why it has to be so aggressive. If you feel that you see someone who fits the description of who you're looking for, what is the problem with you going up to them and saying, starting your interactions off with an apology, I apologize, but we're looking for X person. You resemble X person. Like I said, if you're not them, I apologize for this inconvenience, but can I see your identification? In turn, the black person, because you have to be respectful as well, absolutely, goes into their pocket or into their purse, gives the officer the identification. If they're not that person, thank you for your time. I apologize for the inconvenience. The black person in turn, thank you for your time and thank you for not being aggressive with me, and I understand you're doing your job, and let that be the end of the interactions. Why does it always have to be so aggressive with police officers automatically coming up and just violently putting their hands on people? And I don't see that when they deal with a lot of white people. I don't see that when they deal with a lot of white people. We are always handled differently. And if we say something about it, we are angry black people. We are angry animals. We don't know how to act. We don't know how to communicate if we're upset about it. So we're just supposed to take it, and not even speak about it. One thing that really, really bothers me, but I know the world that I live in, with my son being 18 years old. If someone was to see him out, and he would definitely fit the description of someone who a police officer is looking for, because the only thing they would see is a black boy with a hoodie on his head, because he loves his hoodies, with a hoodie on his head, fitting the description. They wouldn't see a black honor student. They wouldn't see that. They wouldn't see a black athlete. They wouldn't see a black child who has a academic and athletic scholarship to play football in a university. They wouldn't see any of that. They wouldn't see a respectful kid a respectful young man that I raised him to be. They wouldn't see any of that. They would just see a black kid that's 6'4", and fits the description of some other black person that they claim they're looking for. I can tell you guys, I can't remember one time that I have allowed any of my children to walk to a corner store by any house that we live in. Well, we really haven't lived in a lot of houses where there were corner stores, but I can't remember. We've lived close to stores, close enough for me to allow them to walk to. But I can't remember one time where I've allowed my children to just go out the house and just walk to the store. Or just go out the house and just walk down the street or run through the neighborhood or anything unless I'm there with them, especially my son, especially him. Because knowing where I live and how everything that happens here, I refuse to allow him to be another hashtag, another part of why the Black Lives Matter movement is so important. Because now we have to protest because of something that happened to him because he fit the description, or because the police officers or some idiot in the community shot him or did something to him because they felt that he was trying to rob something or steal something or do whatever. You know, I just, and it hurts my feelings sometimes when I think about it, but I know that me limiting certain things is what kept him safe and what kept him alive. And has gotten him to the point to where he is, so he knows and understands the world that we live in, and that he's ready to take his next step in life and go to college and be a strong black man, even though he will always fit the description because he is a young black man and we live in America. Guys, I can remember when I was in school, not doing my master's, but when I was getting my PhD. When I started my PhD, I started it at a predominantly white school, and I can remember leaving campus and being stopped by a police officer in that town. It wasn't a campus police, and you know, at first they stopped me. They were, oh, I stopped you because, you know, that was a yield sign. You didn't yield, blah, 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 blah. Even though I know I had, but whatever. I just wasn't even going to go through that. But, you know, me being asked, what was I doing over there at the school? And two of them got out. One was on my driver's side. One went to my passenger side window. So one was talking to me, driver's side. The other one was on the passenger side. And after our conversation and after our exchange or whatever, I can hear them when they was walking back to the car. One said, Lord, that one's gonna have a doctorate. These schools just educating all these. The man called me a coon. I hadn't heard coon since I left South Carolina. But these schools are educating all of these coons when all this money needs to be put on white women in their education. You know, I've had situations where I've been in grocery stores. I've been followed around in grocery stores before. It's just crazy. I've had situations where I was in stores and I've literally stopped and asked people, you know, employees, why are you following me? What do you want? There is nothing in this store that I have to steal. I'm pretty sure that I have more money in my purse than you have in your bank account. What are you following me around this store for? So, and one thing my husband, you know, he would say to me is, because with him, he looks over people so much with some things he couldn't even care less. He just straight up looks over it. But, you know, he often says to me a lot, now I understand why you handle certain situations and certain people the way you do, because people are really racist. And that's something that I didn't deal with when I lived in Nigeria. You know, when I came to America, I had to sit back and say, people are really funny. So I understand why you handle certain people the way you do, because, he used to tell me, before, honey, you're rude. You're so rude. And I'm like, no, I'm not rude. I know where I live and I know what I've dealt with here. So, I have to be really careful in situations. You can cough, go ahead. And in all these situations, when I talk to my children, I just have to be honest and open with them about situations. One thing that I do, and I always try to teach my kids, I want them to see color when they see people. I want them to see differences when they see people. I want them to see backgrounds when they see people. I want them to see disabilities when they see people. And I want them to see all of these things, because if you can't see and recognize those differences in people, then you can never really love and care and respect people like you need to. We're all different. Nadia may have a disability that I don't have, even though she doesn't have any, but she may have a disability that I don't have. And if I ignore that, then I'm ignoring her. And I'm not seeing her for who she really is. And I'm not loving and respecting her for who she really is. So I do. And I tell people, if you don't see my color, and if you ignore my color, then you don't see me. And you are ignoring me. Because this black skin of mine, it really defines a lot about who I am. I am a black woman. And if you don't see my blackness, then you don't see me. I've had white friends of mine since this situation contact me. I had one who sent me a message after she watched the murder of George Floyd, and she said, I know I'm not close to you, but I just want to hug you, and I just want to put my arms around you and your entire family. I know that you tell me things that you deal with, but as a white woman, I've never lived through or experienced those things, so I really don't relate to it. But I apologize for everything that you and your family has had to deal with because you're black. And, even though I know that I didn't do it, but I apologize that you have to deal with that and with people ignorance. I've had white friends of mine who have openly told me that they grew up in households where their parents were racist. Several of them married outside of their races, and some of them parents don't even deal with them now because they chose to marry outside of their races. But they said they see people for who they are, and they're not going to hate someone because they're a different race, like their parents. So I've had conversations like that with my friends. So I would just, one piece of advice that I would give to everyone who is not a person of color who's watching this: don't be so quick to judge, because you've never walked in the shoes of a black person. And until you're able to walk in our shoes, don't you open your mouth again and say all lives matter to any of us. And we're not angry and aggressive black people. We are tired of our brothers and sisters being murdered in a country that we did more than our share to build. America wouldn't be America without black people, period. Our blood, sweat, and tears went into this country So we deserve to be here and to be respected just as much as any other race here. So don't say that again. All lives matter. Have more decency and common sense about yourself than that. One thing that I can say that I am blessed for right now is when I talk to my kids and when I ask them about them and their experiences with racism at their young ages, there's really nothing that any of them really have to tell me. You have experiences with stuff? No. And I talked to Camion a lot about stuff, and he hasn't. The only thing, with Jayla, and she said it wasn't referred to her, but she went from a school to where the students were predominantly black to a school where they were predominantly white. And she said when she changed schools, she would hear the nigger word a whole lot, which is something that she wasn't used to before changing her schools. Were any of them referring to you?
No, they used it like they were slang, like it was slang.
Like slang?
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys can hear, but she said it was used like slang, like it's something cool to say. That's the way that they were using it. So they weren't calling any black students nigger.
No, they would call their white friends that, and they would think it was funny.
And I don't know if y'all hear her, guys, but she said, it would be other white students calling their white friends nigger and stuff like that, like using it as slang. And that's something that just, she wasn't used to at her previous school. So guys, I guess what, with this video, I just giving you an insight to a reality that is different from yours if you're not a black person living in America. Because our lives are totally different. Everything that I've received, I had to work twice as hard for. And is it fair? Absolutely not. But it did teach me to be grateful for what I have and grateful for my family and the love that I have. It saddens me that in 2020 that I'm making a video like this. It saddens me that in 2020 that things are happening the way that they have, and that I've experienced so many negative things with police officers that I have experienced. But it has taught me, it's taught me a lot about people and me really taking people for their word when they show me and when they tell me who and what they are. And I definitely do. I take it all for face value. I'm getting very discouraged about seeing people being attacked by police officers on camera. I saw on CNN last night with, I think he was 71 years old, speaking with a police officer, and the police officers just pushed him, and he fell down and started bleeding from the back of his head. And the police officer who pushed him started to bend down to try to help the guy, but he was pushed off by another police officer as he was saying, no, don't help him, and they just walked off. I think I saw on the news that they were suspended without pay. I saw other reports where two news reporters were sitting in a corner just reporting the news, and I think they were Australian news reporters, and they were just attacked by police officers. And the report that came back from it said that they were that they probably fell or something. I don't know, but it was foolishness because you can basically see it on the news or report. The situation that happened here a few nights ago in Salisbury during the protest. Some of the kids that were peacefully protesting, they were threatened with being put in jail. However, a truck came through going at a high speed and could have hit some of these kids, but the police officers didn't see that. They just let it go. So many things happens here in Rowan County, guys, and I've been here for 20 years. I think, yeah, it's been 20 years. And so many things happen here. And it has so much to do with the leadership in the town and the culture of this town. It does. There's a lot of racism here. In a town as small as Salisbury. There's a lot of it here. You know, people, it's easier for people to just turn a blind eye to it and say that it doesn't exist, but it does. And if you don't run in certain circles, the things that happen to you will just be brushed off. It'll just be brushed off. And it's sad. It's really sad. Like I said, that's why I keep such a tight hand on my children, because my main priority is to make sure that none of them become a hashtag, and that they all remain safe, and that I'm doing my part as their parent not to ever have them in any bad situations, and to do everything that I have to do as a parent to prepare them for the world outside of my household, because there's a lot of it here. And some things they understand, some things they don't, some things that really upset them, and it should. But guys, I'm going to just end this video here. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I want you guys to continue to do your best to remain safe. I want you guys to continue to stand up and call out racism every time you see it. Call out injustice every time you see it, because I definitely am. I don't care who may become upset about it, who toes that I step on. Wrong is wrong and right is right. And everything that I see that's not correct, whether it's against my race or another race, I'm definitely going to call it out. I love you guys. Stay humble and stay safe, and I will definitely see you guys in my next video.
Locking eyes across the silence, I think you feel it too. Bite my tongue, turn my head, don't wanna run to you. Lost in emotion out in the open, trying to keep my cool. That's what I'm used to.